How my daughter-in-law's shocking demands transformed our family in just 6 months. The sun poured into the cozy kitchen of Sweet Maple, casting warm light on the counters lined with sugar-dusted pastries. Sarah watched the people she'd known her entire life stream in for morning treats, their smiles a testament to her family's legacy. But today's joy was eclipsed when Jake and Lila stepped through the door, a whirlwind of energy that swept through her world. Lila's enthusiasm filled the air like the sweet scent of cinnamon, inviting yet overwhelming. "We need to modernize, Sarah," she declared, her voice echoing in Sarah's mind, drowning out the comforting sounds of the bakery. "Vegan options, extended hours." Sarah's heart sank. The bakery wasn't just a business, it was a piece of her soul. Memories flooded her mind, the laughter of children tugging at their parents, the way Mr. Thompson always asked for his favorite chocolate chip cookies. Lila's demands felt like an assault on her traditions, each request striking like a hammer. "But why?" Sarah's voice was shaky, barely a whisper, as she felt the unsteady ground beneath her. The days that followed were plagued with unease. Conversations around town turned awkward, the usual Saturday morning rush punctuated by whispered doubts. "What's wrong with Sweet Maple?" a friend asked, concern etched on her face. "It's always been perfect the way it is." Sarah felt trapped, her heart pulling in two different directions as the love for her family twisted into fear. If she didn't support her son, would she lose him to Lila? Yet, how could she abandon what Sweet Maple represented? Just then, Jake's loyalty to Lila rippled through the bakery like an uninvited draft. Each time he encouraged her ideas, Sarah felt the weight of betrayal clawing deeper into her chest. Would their family bonds shatter beneath the pressure of Lila's vision? The question echoed in her mind like an unyielding drumbeat. Before she could unpack that stormy spiral of despair, a chilling revelation struck Maplewood. A megastore was on its way, a giant among the quaint charm of her town. Panic ignited among the townsfolk, clinging to familiarity as if it were a lifeline. Sweet Maple was on shaky ground, and suddenly Sarah found herself forced to confront Lila. Desperation twisted her gut. Partnership was the only way forward. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. They worked late into the night, flour dust rising in the dim light like the specters of old. Recipes reborn. Sarah's resentment collided with her desire for survival, the blender of doubt swirling within her like an angry tempest. What if Lila was right? The possibility of a new beginning sent a thrill of hope alongside turmoil. Could they unite? "A lavender-infused pastry," Sarah murmured, her thoughts dancing on the edge of a new dream, yet fear gripped her like a vice. Each moment spent collaborating with Lila stirred a conflict deep within her. Would this blend of innovation and their cherished history dilute Sweet Maple's identity? The clock ticked menacingly, bringing them closer to a reckoning. Sarah wrestled with the realities, her heart racing, breath irregular as she faced an inevitable choice. As they shaped the future of Sweet Maple, Sarah realized that perhaps the truest test lay not in the recipes or the flour, but rather in their commitment to one another. Would they open the doors only to find an empty bakery, its heart lost in nostalgia? Early morning light streamed through the bakery window, illuminating the kitchen as Sarah set to work mixing the new vegan batter. Lila's vibrant suggestions had transformed Sweet Maple in unexpected ways. And as the gentle hum of the mixer filled the air, a sense of determination began to replace her initial skepticism. She was stepping into uncharted territory, yet with each fold of the new recipe, a flicker of excitement emerged. Yet uncertainty lingered alongside her hope. Would people embrace these changes? The lavender-infused pastries had received some buzz, but was it enough to face the looming threat of the megastore? Sarah's thoughts darted between preserving tradition and adapting to an evolving landscape, the duality of her journey crystallizing in every new recipe. This could be a turning point, she whispered to herself, mixing the batter with a fervor fueled by both fear and aspiration. The chatter from the cafe section of Sweet Maple suggested a mix of curiosity and hesitance. Old regulars adorned with nostalgic smiles eyed the unfamiliar pastries with suspicion, while the younger crowd leaned in closer, intrigued by the innovation. Sarah felt trapped at that moment, balancing on a precipice, unsure if she was stepping forward or tumbling backward. Doubt knotted in her stomach, felt even stronger with Jake and Leela's animated discussions about future innovations echoing from the back room. As the day progressed, she noticed something shifting within her, a budding confidence emerging amidst the chaos of uncertainty. The warmth of the sun streamed through the front window, but the shadows of doubt remained inside her. Sarah couldn't deny that Leela's ideas re-energized Sweet Maple after the initial shock had worn off, injecting a fresh life. Wasn't this evolution what every successful business required? The bakery had survived decades on family recipes, but could it survive on nostalgia alone? During a brief lull, Sarah found herself alone with Jake. He was flipping through the comments on social media posts where Leela had announced the new offerings. With every scroll, Sarah's heart raced. "What do you really think about this, Jake?" she asked, conflict seeping into her tone. "Do you think we're losing the essence of Sweet Maple?" Jake paused, his brow furrowing slightly. "Mom, I think we can honor where we came from while also stepping into the future. We can't ignore what's happening outside these doors. Look at the buzz around the vegan pastries. Change can be good." His words struck Sarah like a bell tolling in the silence of her uncertainty. Could she truly balance the foundation of Sweet Maple with Lila's vibrant innovations without losing herself in the process? The notion was as invigorating as it was suffocating. On the one hand, her heart was tightly woven into the fabric of every recipe, but on the other, wasn't the taste of success continuously shifting? "I just don't want to forget why this place exists. It's not just about pastries, Jake. It's about community," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. Jake's gaze shifted from the screen to her, and she caught the empathy in his eyes. Their bond was still intact, though it felt taut and fragile with every new ingredient added to their shared dream. As Sarah left the conversation, a revolutionary idea sparked in her mind. Maybe it was time to share her uncertainties openly, not just with Jake and Lila, but with the community that cherished the bakery. Perhaps holding a tasting event could bridge the gap between old traditions and new ideas, honor the familiar voices while embracing the new. Would it unify the town under the Sweet Maple banner, or would it further divide them? As Sarah prepared for the tasting event, an exhilarating mix of empowerment and anxiety coursed through her. Her heart raced with anticipation as she recognized a profound truth. Facing the unknown was not only a professional necessity, it was deeply personal. The moment of real connection was approaching, and as she found herself gazing over the delicate pastries, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something larger. Would this event lead to acceptance or affirm her fears? With the baking pans stacked high and the aroma of innovation in the air, Sarah prepared for the confrontation with her community, unaware of the emotional storm brewing just beyond her doorstep. What awaited her could redefine not just Sweet Maple, but her entire family. The question lingered. Would they unite in their shared love for the bakery, or would traditions clash with progress in a way that forever altered their bonds? As the morning of the tasting approached, anxiety coiled itself tightly around Sarah's chest. She spent the night tossing and turning, wrestling with the thoughts that flared to life whenever she closed her eyes. Images of the bakery filled with familiar faces mingled with the unnerving prospect of criticism and confounding reactions to her new offerings. Each lavender-infused pastry and gluten-free muffin felt like a weighty decision wrapped in uncertainty. Prior to opening, the bustle of the bakery felt different, charged with an electric anticipation. Regulars were scattered by the counter, exchanging whispers that echoed in Sarah's ears, amplifying her mounting trepidation. Would they even give her creations a chance? How long before old loyalties to her mother's recipes overshadowed the novelty of innovation? She stifled a sigh and focused on the tasks at hand, fighting against the tide of doubt. Lila stepped in, her presence a beacon of enthusiasm in the dim uncertainty that surrounded Sarah. "Can you feel it? This is our chance." Lila's voice rang with optimism as she organized the table with fresh flowers, vibrant and inviting, a stark contrast to the internal storm brewing inside Sarah. That optimism was contagious, and Sarah found herself drawing strength from Lila's buoyancy. "I hope so," Sarah replied, forcing a smile. They worked together like clockwork, setting out the pastries with artistically arranged coffee mugs. But as Sarah decorated the final treats, her thoughts drifted to the families that had stood by Sweet Maple for generations. Would they understand that she was striving to honor the past while embracing a new future? The duality of tradition and progress felt like a heavy yoke on her shoulders. With the clock ticking down, a wave of determination surged through her. The time had come to face her fears, not just for herself, but for Sweet Maple and the legacy she wanted to build within the bakery walls. "Let's welcome everyone with open arms," she suggested to Lila, who nodded in eager agreement. No longer was this just about pies and muffins. It had morphed into something deeper, a journey of evolution and acceptance. As the door swung open, Sarah steeled herself, forcing her insecurities to the back of her mind. The tinkle of the bell above the door resonated, signaling not just the arrival of customers, but the arrival of change. People poured in, drawn by the enticing aroma, the warmth of the bakery, and yes, perhaps out of nervous curiosity too. She offered her warmest greetings, making connections with familiar faces while keeping an eye on the newcomers hesitant to try her new offerings. The first few bites taken by an older couple seated near the window felt monumental. Their reactions would set the tone for the day. As they sampled a vegan cupcake, Sarah's breath hitched in her throat, her heart pounding with anticipation. Their hesitant smiles morphed into expressions of delight. With each nod, every appreciative utterance, Sarah sent her confidence blooming. Was this the shift they all needed? The tasting evolved into an unexpected wave of dialogue. Some questioned her approach, poking at the fabric of her decisions, while others lamented over their beloved traditions. Sarah found herself in a psychological tug-of-war, fielding opinions that felt personal, yet also resonated with her own inner conflicts. Each response sparked introspection, pushing her to confront not only her role as a baker, but her identity as a daughter, a mother, and a community member. "Are you abandoning us for some trendy idea?" one elderly gentleman asked pointedly, arms crossed, his brow furrowed. A lump formed in Sarah's throat, and the room seemed to hush in anticipation. The intensity of the moment pressed upon her, but beneath her apprehension, a newfound resilience glimmered. "I'm not trying to erase our past, but to grow our future, to invite everyone in while honoring where we've come from," she explained, her voice firm yet vulnerable. The faint murmurs in the bakery crescendoed around her. Members who were once near strangers became allies, strangers became supporters, and every nibble of pastry transformed the air thick with possibility. As the day's conversations morphed into something deeper, Sarah felt a realization wash over her. This was not merely a test of her skills as a baker. It was a test of her skills as a leader, a decision-maker amidst the chaos of change. But just as she began to feel the stirrings of a hopeful future, the sound of the bell jingled again. A familiar face stepped through the door, and Sarah's heart sank. Tension surged back as the looming presence of Mrs. Palmer, a stalwart custodian of tradition, filled the space like a dark cloud. The moment of truth arrived. Would this new chapter affirm her choices or unravel the fabric she had so meticulously tried to weave? As Mrs. Palmer entered, the lively atmosphere shifted with her presence. The warmth that had permeated the room faded, giving way to an electric tension. Sarah felt her muscles tighten, the buoyant energy of hopeful patrons transforming into a heavy expectation. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Palmer," she managed to say, her voice shaky but determined. They both held a shared history, one woven into the very fabric of Sweet Maple. The elderly woman surveyed the bakery's transformation. Lavender hues, innovative pastries, and the new sign highlighting the gluten-free section. A silence settled as Mrs. Palmer considered her response, her sharp gaze examining every detail with an intensity that made Sarah's pulse race. "Sarah," she began, her voice steady yet tinged with skepticism, "is this really the direction you want to take?" Each word felt like a weighty challenge, anchoring Sarah in place. Responding was instinctive, driven by the urgent need to defend her vision. "I respect our traditions, Mrs. Palmer, but I believe we need to adapt." Her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of fear and determination. "I've studied these recipes, experimented with flavors. I truly think we can honor what has been while exploring what could be." Mrs. Palmer raised an eyebrow, the action imbued with skepticism. And when did throwing away beloved recipes become honoring them? Those were crafted with love, not conformity to some trendy fad. The defense mechanism inside Sarah simmered, and a flicker of irritation sparked within her. Was she in a fight to reclaim her intent, or merely grappling with a ghost of the past? "I'm not discarding anything. I'm inviting new flavors to the table," she emphasized, a hint of frustration lining her words. "Tradition can evolve. Look around you. People are tasting and enjoying. Isn't that growth?" The standoff felt palpable as patrons moved about, unaware of the brewing storm. Leela, sensing the tension, stepped closer, hands poised at her sides, ready to support Sarah. Yet Sarah realized she needed to take this confrontation alone. It was her battle, after all. Forcing herself to breathe deeply, Sarah chose to approach the conversation differently. "But, Mrs. Palmer, what if instead of losing our identity, we're strengthening it? Couldn't we create something that celebrates our past while being inclusive?" Mrs. Palmer's expression softened just a fraction, yet that glimmer of understanding felt fleeting. "You think this is easy for me, Sarah? You're taking risks that come with responsibility. In trying to modernize, you could alienate those who treasure our roots." Her words struck like a hammer, and in that moment, a realization dawned on Sarah. Mrs. Palmer's opposition stemmed not from spite, but from love. Love for the bakery, for the legacy, for the community they had built together. Perhaps this wasn't just about business, but about emotional attachments that ran deep. "I don't want to alienate anyone," Sarah confessed, her voice quieted by sincerity. "I want to be a part of our bakery's future, one that honors those roots you cherish." For a heartbeat, Mrs. Palmer appeared thoughtful, her eyes narrowing as she weighed the sincerity in Sarah's voice against her own traditions. The entire bakery held its breath, waiting for a shift, a decision. Then a quiet moment followed, the kind that invites contemplation, before Mrs. Palmer finally exhaled. "Prove it. Show me why this change is necessary. If you can bring something to the table, something that truly resonates, then perhaps I'll understand. But this isn't just dessert. This is our history." Her words hung in the air, echoing with the weight of challenge. Sarah felt a rush of determination wash over her. This was the trial she needed, not just for herself, but to solidify her place in Sweet Maple's legacy. As the day continued, she walked through the bakery, observing the laughter, the bites of pastries that made their way to satisfying nods, and the gleam of admiration from newer customers. This was her opportunity, an invitation to dive deeper into her craft and merge past with future. But the question reverberated in her mind: was she ready to prove herself? Just as she dared to imagine the possibilities, the bell jingled once again, pulling her out of her contemplation. A new patron stepped through the door, their expression uncertain, casting another layer of anticipation onto her already brewing storm of ambition. What would this encounter reveal about the future she was fighting to create? As the bell jingled, Sarah instinctively straightened, battling the blend of anxiety and hope washing over her. The new patron stepped in, revealing a young woman with a stylish bob haircut, mascara that highlighted doe-like eyes, and a keen sense of curiosity that radiated from her posture. Sarah couldn't help but feel drawn in, as if this individual carried a hidden potential, a bridge to connect her vision of Sweet Maple to the past Mrs. Palmer held dear. "Welcome to Sweet Maple," Sarah called out, mustering a bright smile to mask her own uncertainty. "What can I get for you today?" The young woman wandered towards the display case, her gaze dancing over the assortment of goodies. "Oh, everything looks so delicious," she said, but her voice carried a note of hesitation that made Sarah's heart race. "Is there something specific you're looking for? We have some exciting new flavors today," Sarah prompted, eagerly trying to engage. As she spoke, she felt the weight of her own mission bear down on her. She needed an ally, a voice that could echo her intentions. "Actually," the woman began, her fingers lingering over a lavender-infused pastry, "I've been following your updates online. The concept of blending traditional recipes with modern flavors caught my attention." Did she just say that? Sarah's pulse quickened. Could this be the response she needed to build her case with Mrs. Palmer? "I'm glad to hear that. I believe we can bring fresh life to classic pastries without losing what makes them special." A smile flickered across the woman's lips, an encouraging sign. "Exactly. People love nostalgia, but new experiences are what keep them coming back. You know, just last week I was at a cafe where they served a twist on an old family recipe, and it blew my mind." As they exchanged ideas, Sarah felt herself awaken to that sense of purpose, a flicker of inspiration igniting within her. This patron wasn't just a random customer. She was connecting with the very essence of what Sarah wanted for Sweet Maple. "What do you think would resonate with our regulars without turning them away?" The woman pondered for a moment. "Maybe something like a vegan carrot cake or a chai-flavored scone. Those flavors have been trending, but they still carry the warmth of home." Ideas began to flow like coffee brewing in the morning light, and Sarah took mental notes, conjuring an image of the bakery bursting with life and colors. If she could craft a menu item that appealed to both the traditions and the new tastes, it could symbolize the bridge she wanted to build. Each suggestion from the patron carved away at Sarah's doubt, instilling a growing confidence. But now came the twist. Could she transform this inspiration into an actual proposal for Mrs. Palmer? "Do you think you'd be interested in coming back next week to sample some of these ideas? I'd love your feedback," Sarah suggested, driven by the urgency of her newfound vision while nurturing excitement. "I'd be all in," the woman exclaimed, the fire of enthusiasm alighting in her eyes. Moments later, the young woman thanked her and left, but Sarah stood frozen, contemplating the interaction. The conversation had catalyzed something significant, sparking an idea. Could she create a small tasting session to present not just her creations, but also the community of voices supporting her? Yet, Mrs. Palmer's challenge loomed large. If Sarah wanted to implement this idea, it would have to be done carefully. She would need to incorporate Mrs. Palmer's reservations, ensuring the tasting would truly honor their roots while inviting change. As she began sketching the plan in her mind, another doubt flickered. How would she communicate this to Mrs. Palmer? The stakes of the tasting skyrocketed, woven with a weight of expectation, risking everything if it didn't resonate. With renewed clarity, Sarah knew she had to prepare meticulously. But what if some of Mrs. Palmer's long-standing patrons resisted these new offerings? What if this tasting only pushed them further apart? The tension swirled within her, mixing eagerness and apprehension as she finished closing up shop. A sense of purpose surged through her, but so did a chilling awareness of the precariousness of her position. One thing was certain: if she was going to prove her worth, it had to start now, with not only convincing Mrs. Palmer, but reflecting the essence of Sweet Maple in every decision she made. And as she left that evening, the weight of her choice confronted her again. Was she prepared to both honor the bakery's legacy and carve out her own path? Only time and courage would tell. Yet, before she could reach her car, an unexpected figure emerged from the shadows of the bakery entrance, someone she recognized but had hoped not to see. Would this meeting be the bridge she needed, or the storm her resolve would falter against? Sarah's heart dropped as she recognized the familiar face stepping into the dim light of the evening. It was Jenna, her college roommate, someone whose influence had once loomed large in her life, yet whose presence now brought a rush of mixed feelings. Jenna had always exuded confidence, a trait that both inspired and intimidated Sarah. "Sarah, it's been ages," Jenna's voice rang out, bright with enthusiasm, but Sarah couldn't shake the sense of embarrassment that hung in the air. She hadn't seen her since graduation, hadn't shared even the smallest update about her life. It felt like a chasm had opened between them, a chasm filled with unplayed moments and unachieved dreams. "Yeah, it has. I was just," she stumbled over her words, unsure of what to say. Her hands instinctively tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit she thought she had outgrown. "Are you still working at that bakery?" Jenna asked, her gaze scanning the storefront, taking in the charming decor filled with vintage photos of Sweet Maple's storied past. "I love it. Such a quirky place." "Yes, still here," Sarah replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm working on some new ideas." Forcing the small talk felt futile. Sarah thought about the tasting session she hoped to execute, images of pastel pastries and vibrant flavors flooding her mind, yet she hesitated to share that vision. Would that reveal a vulnerability she was not ready to confront? "Well, I was just in town visiting my parents," Jenna continued, her voice shimmering with excitement. "And I have this great idea, purely for fun, a pop-up event showcasing local talent and businesses. You should totally join. It would be amazing, and I could—" "Wait!" The word escaped Sarah's lips, almost a reflexive protest, as if Jenna's energy threatened to coax a hidden fear from within, one that whispered about her inadequacies. A pop-up? But what if it's not the right fit for Sweet Maple? Curiosity danced in Jenna's eyes. Why not? You have to take some risks. You can't just stick with traditional flavors forever. "That's not it," Sarah interjected, frustration breaching her calm facade. "I'm trying to honor what this bakery stands for while introducing some change. It's a delicate balance." "Just think about it," Jenna urged, her voice almost melodic, beckoning Sarah's ambition to leap, to align with the boldness Jenna had always embodied. "Imagine combining your ideas with your passion. You could attract a whole new audience." Despite herself, Sarah felt a flicker of excitement teasing at the edges of her uncertainty. There was something intoxicating about the possibility of reinvention, a siren call to break free of the self-imposed constraints that had gripped her for too long. Maybe if I took on your suggestion, Sarah trailed off, her mind now torn between exploring this stimulating opportunity and her loyalty to Mrs. Palmer's values. The stakes were rising again, and the sheer thought of proposing a pop-up event sent guilt and exhilaration spiraling through her. Exactly. You could host a tasting session there, present your new ideas to a whole community, and get feedback in real time. Jenna's excitement was contagious, fueling Sarah's growing anxiety and newfound inspiration. Would this be her chance to prove her vision to Mrs. Palmer? Or would it lead her down a path that alienated the very foundation she aimed to respect? As they stood there, Sarah's heart raced. Could a bold leap forward be the catalyst for her change, or would it plunge her into further chaos? Jenna's confident demeanor only amplified Sarah's internal battle. I know it feels risky, but after working in the corporate world, I realized something. Sometimes the risks we take lead to the most significant rewards. Think about it and call me tomorrow, okay? Sure, Sarah replied, though her mind was already racing with possibilities and consequences. As Jenna turned to walk away, Sarah lingered at the threshold of her bakery, locked in a moment of reflection. The divergence between honoring tradition and integrating innovation pressed heavily against her heart. What if the pop-up were the key to the pivot she needed? Would exposing her creative ambitions lead her to implementation success or rejection? Tomorrow would demand a decision, but could she even begin to sift through her emotions tonight? Just as she turned to leave, the door to Sweet Maple swung open again. Tall man strode in, casting a long shadow that both welcomed and warned. His scrutinizing gaze immediately searched for her, enforcing an uneasy clarity. Today's discoveries were far from over. Would he challenge her vision, or was he an unexpected ally? The figure moved closer, revealing sharp features and an air of self-assurance that filled the bakery. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, uncertain if this stranger offered rivalry or collaboration. As he reached the counter, the scent of fresh pastries mingled with an unfamiliar energy that made Sarah both cautious and curious. "Hi there, I'm Alex," he said, extending a hand with a sincere smile that belied the intensity of his gaze. "I've heard great things about Sweet Maple and thought I'd stop by. I'm looking for new flavors for my cafe downtown, and rumor has it this is the place to explore." His words ignited a flicker of hope within Sarah, mingling with the anxiety that had taken root since Jenna's visit. "I'm Sarah, the head baker here," she replied, shaking his hand, her thoughts swirling. Was this the opening she needed to discuss her ideas? "Pleasure to meet you, Sarah," Alex said, as he surveyed the carefully curated display of baked goods. "Have you considered expanding your offerings? I mean, they're beautiful, but sometimes a little innovation ignites a spark." Just like Jenna, his suggestion was a knife cutting through her previous convictions. This was the moment to let her guard down or to retreat into complacency. "I've been thinking about introducing some new flavors. Maybe a tasting session?" She hesitated, gauging his reaction. "But I'm not sure how well it would align with what Mrs. Palmer envisioned for the bakery." Sarah's mind raced as she weighed his every word. Here was someone outside her established circle, someone who might provide the perspective she needed. His interest could offer her validation, yet the fear of stepping outside the familiar tightened her throat. "That sounds like a fantastic idea," he asserted, leaning against the counter, unyielding in his enthusiasm. Imagine the allure of having a pop-up event, showcasing that tasting session, and bringing in new clientele. Not just another pastry shop, but the heart of an evolving food scene. You could take Sweet Maple to new heights. His confidence struck a chord, strangely infectious but also intimidating. Could she really challenge the traditions that had shaped her career? But as she stood there, she recalled Jenna's fiery encouragement, and something within her began to unravel. Could she blend her commitment to Sweet Maple's heritage with a fresh approach? It felt overwhelmingly daunting. I mean, it's about balancing what's traditional and what's new, she responded slowly, still feeling uncertain. I want to honor the legacy of the bakery while also embracing change. But fear of backlash keeps me rooted in stasis. You're doing exactly what Jenna cautioned against, sticking to comfort, Alex said with an earnestness that sparked a flicker of recognition in her. Taking a few risks doesn't mean abandoning what you love. It can be about enhancing it. The fear of failure is natural, but what if it leads to success you've never imagined? With each word, he peeled back layers of doubt that had clouded Sarah's vision. Each suggestion was a hammer against the complacency she had allowed to encase her. Perhaps this chance encounter held more significance than she anticipated, nudging her towards a decision she had put on hold for too long. As the conversation unfolded, Alex shared stories of places he had visited, of cafes that turned mundane into extraordinary through a simple shift in perspective. She could feel her imagination sparking, her heart steadying with a newfound courage. After what felt like a lifetime, she found herself asking, "So what is it that you're doing exactly? What's your story?" Just as he began to share, the familiar chime of the doorbell interrupted them, and another customer entered. Sarah felt the moment slip away, but the possibilities flickered like the lights above, their warmth wrapping around her like an embrace, an affirmation that the path ahead was clearing. Driven by curiosity and ignited determination, Sarah made a silent vow to consider not just the words of Jenna and Alex, but her own inner voice, the voice that yearned for growth and exploration. Tomorrow she would think of a plan, but first she would listen to Alex's story and discover who he might be in the unfolding narrative of her transformation. Was he just another customer, or could he be a catalyst for her ambitions? The choice lay ahead like an unopened door, waiting for her to decide whether to step through. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced at the new customer, a woman poring over the selections in the display case. She felt a twinge of frustration that their conversation had been interrupted. However, there was also a persistent heartbeat within her, an urge to uncover what Alex had to share. "Just a moment," Sarah said, keeping her focus on the customer, but her ears tuned to Alex, eager for insight. "What were you saying about your cafe?" He smiled, a hint of understanding in his eyes, as if he recognized the shift in her attention. "Oh, right. I run a little cafe called the Urban Cup. It started as a tiny coffee shop, but I've been slowly working to expand into pastries and small bites." And Sarah couldn't help but interrupt, driven by her newfound resolve. "What kind of pastries do you serve? Have you tried experimenting with flavors?" Alex leaned back slightly, a glint of enthusiasm lighting his features as he began to recount his journey. He spoke of his struggles in finding the perfect chocolate croissant recipe, the delicate balance between flaky and gooey, and how he had ventured into uniquely inspired flavors like raspberry chili. It sparked an unexpected response. People loved the combination. It screamed both novelty and comfort. Intrigued, Sarah nodded, but also hesitated. "You really think pushing boundaries can yield positive results? I fear it could push my regulars away." "Sure, there are risks," Alex nodded earnestly. "But sometimes the truest connections to our craft happen a little outside our comfort zone. If we only stick to what's safe, we might miss discovering what could resonate even deeper with our customers. Always keep an open ear to feedback, and don't be afraid to pivot." The air between them buzzed with innovation. Sarah had been entrenched in the rhythms of Sweet Maple's older recipes for so long that breaking away felt daunting. Yet each of Alex's anecdotes felt like a gentle nudge towards freedom, a reminder of her own aspirations before life, with its layers of expectations, built walls around her creativity. Empowered by Alex's words, Sarah took a deep breath. "What if I introduce a limited-time tasting menu? Weekly themes could help mix things up, and I could use my classics as a base to incorporate fresh elements, maybe even your ideas. Exactly, he exclaimed. You're building on what you already do best while still making it your own. And who knows, you might find things out that you like better. His enthusiasm was contagious. The specter of fear still lurked in her mind, but now the uncertainty had a companion in determination. Sarah began to envision what her own tasting menu would look like. Seasonal ingredients, local collaborations, possibilities blossomed. As the new customer approached the counter with her selections, Sarah dealt with the order mechanically, her mind alive with new prospects. She was crafting an untested recipe for change in her own life as Alex continued to weave his stories about the triumphs and missteps of his culinary journey. What was once an ordinary day was quickly morphing into a seminal moment in her career, a point of divergence. She felt the weight of excitement intermixed with trepidation, but framed her thoughts in a way that broke the tension. It's about learning, she reminded herself, not just from successes, but from failures too. That perspective began to dissolve the walls she had built around her fears. By the time Alex finished his tales of culinary adventures, Sarah felt a burgeoning conviction. In his stories, she glimpsed her struggle mirrored, experimentation, vulnerability, and ultimately growth. As she locked eyes with him, intent and fervor mirrored in their gazes, she was determined to take what she learned and put it into practice. "All right, Alex," she said, grinning. "Let's design this tasting session together. I want your input." "Now that's a plan," he smiled, a satisfying sense of camaraderie settling over them. But just as the seeds of collaboration were sprouting, the doorbell chimed again, this time heralding a familiar face, Mrs. Palmer, the bakery owner. Her entrance felt like a strong gust disrupting the fresh air of possibility. Sarah's stomach knotted at the thought of explaining her newfound aspirations, still clouded by uncertainty about Mrs. Palmer's reaction. Did she dare to show her evolving plans and tempt the wrath of the bakery's traditional foundation? Confrontation was inevitable. Would she be prepared to stand her ground when it meant risking confrontation with the person who had always expected her to remain in her lane? Maybe that transformation wasn't just for the bakery, but for her as well. As Mrs. Palmer crossed the threshold with her usual briskness, Sarah felt the atmosphere shift, a chill brushing over the warmth of her budding aspirations. The older woman exuded authority, her experience in the baking world having carved her a pronounced niche in the community, the very same niche Sarah had begun to dream of reformatting, like a dough waiting to rise. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Palmer," Sarah managed, a thin veneer of composure coating her internal turmoil. "Is everything running smoothly, Sarah? I've heard the whispers about some new ideas floating around," Mrs. Palmer replied, her piercing eyes examining the surroundings and landing momentarily on Alex, who was now smiling warmly at Sarah. "Yes, actually," Sarah responded, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've been considering a tasting menu to mix things up a bit." "Ah, the old shake things up approach," Mrs. Palmer interjected, her tone almost dismissive. "Tell me, what does that entail?" The words tumbled in her mind like flour, chaotic and unsifted. Was this where she would reveal her internal metamorphosis? "I want to," she hesitated, battling the urge to retreat into the familiar. But Alex's encouragement reverberated within her. "I want to explore incorporating seasonal ingredients and collaborate with local farmers. Maybe even some unique flavor combinations, like a raspberry chili tart." The moment of silence felt like a judgment, the weight of Mrs. Palmer's gaze penetrating deeper. "Raspberry chili? That's not traditional, is it?" "True, but food is evolving," Sarah said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "People are looking for experience as much as sustenance. This could be a way to engage our customers on a different level." The disappointment flitted across Mrs. Palmer's face like a shadow. You know, tradition has its own beauty. It's comfort food people come back for. Of course, I don't want to abandon that, Sarah pressed on, her determination swelling. But what if we could offer something fresh within that frame? It doesn't have to be one or the other. A brewing tension settled between them, an unspoken battle of values, experience versus exploration. Twinges of self-doubt whispered in Sarah's ears, but she remade her stance. If we cater only to what's familiar, won't we risk losing touch with our evolving clientele? Mrs. Palmer's lips pressed into a firm line. You may attract new customers, but what about those who cherish the essence of this bakery? We can't abandon our roots. Her words sunk deep, striking chords of unease in Sarah's heart. Was she challenging more than just a recipe? What if, instead of abandoning, I integrate? Our classics could still remain, just with a twist. The silence that followed felt monumental. Sarah fought for poise amid a storm of questions. Why was she so determined to articulate a vision that felt like launching herself toward a precipice? Did she even have what it took to fight for this? Sarah, think carefully. You wouldn't want to jeopardize your place here just for notions of grandeur, Mrs. Palmer finally replied, a veil of concern lacing her tone. For a fleeting moment, Sarah felt the breath of the familiar world wrap around her, but the morphing thoughts of possibility tugged her back. It was not just about pastries. It was about her identity, her future. Maybe I need to embrace the risk, Mrs. Palmer. It's time to explore what I can become within this space, she asserted. With that, she felt a surge shaking off the weight of expectation, an embracing of the unknown beginning to wrap around her. Some battles are not worth fighting, dear. Mrs. Palmer inclined her chin, her eyes cold. Choose wisely, for you may find the consequences of your curiosity heavier than the comfort of tradition. As the tension hung heavy in the air, Sarah confronted the realization that her choice wasn't merely professional, but personal. Was she ready to stake her future on a banquet of risks? She glanced at Alex, who watched with intrigue and encouragement. The ache of intuition coiled tightly. She needed to chart her own path, regardless of tradition. Their gaze met, amplifying her resolve, a silent agreement igniting between them, a pact fueled by ambition and possibility. But as Sarah opened her mouth to respond, another element shifted the dynamics. Mrs. Palmer's phone buzzed furiously, vibrating against the counter. Frowning, she answered, her expression transitioning from annoyance to alarm as she listened. "What do you mean it's—" Mrs. Palmer's voice trailed off, eyes widening with a magnitude that meticulously peeled away the layers of animosity hanging between them. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, curiosity overtaking trepidation. What news could possibly change everything in an instant? The aroma of ambition intermingled with the scent of anxious uncertainty as Sarah braced herself for revelations that could alter not only the course of her vision, but the very fabric of everything she believed about her place in the bakery. The cafe was charged with an urgency that sliced through the tension created by the earlier confrontation, drawing every eye toward Mrs. Palmer as she turned her back to them, focusing intently on the voice coming through her phone. Sarah's heart raced, feeling the tide of emotions shift around her. She felt emboldened yet apprehensive, words and ideas racing to take shape, but hampered by the weight of the unexpected moment. Mrs. Palmer emerged from her phone call with a pallor that indicated something significant had shifted. "There's been an announcement regarding the megastore. They're accelerating the opening date." Her voice quivered, strained and serious. A murmur of disbelief washed over the bakery, and even Alex's enthusiasm became momentarily ensnared. "What does that mean?" Sarah blurted out, her voice trembling and filled with concern. "Are we ready to face the competition?" A shiver slithered down Sarah's spine as she watched the realization dawn on the other patrons. The words were as possible as they were unsettling. The tiny town was unprepared for the challenge to its quaint and familiar charm, the anchor that had held Sweet Maple and its community together. Mrs. Palmer's features sharpened with resolve. This could change everything for Sweet Maple. We need to act quickly. Our traditions can be a shield, or they can be a challenge that evolves us into something new. The timing couldn't be more critical. In that instant, Sarah felt the anxiety of the previous days collapse into urgency, transforming it into something palpable and powerful. This wasn't just about tastings or pastries anymore. It was about survival. The possibilities that had once seemed daunting now began coalescing into a vision of their strength. What if we launched the tasting session to showcase our best offerings alongside new innovations? It could create buzz, a rallying call to the community to unite for Sweet Maple, Sarah found herself declaring, words flowing with unexpected assertiveness. Truly addressing the dynamic of change felt like a unifying bond forming, a tapestry woven from the threads of traditionalism and modern creativity. What if we highlight both the old and the new? We could have signature tastings, old favorites that remind everyone of home, while introducing fantastic new flavors that captivate potential customers. Every eye in the bakery turned toward her, the flickering candles of nerves and excitement reflecting in their eyes. Let's rally, Sarah continued, her voice brimming with conviction. This is about more than just dessert. It's about crafting a future together. Alex nodded eagerly, an affirmative smile encouraging Sarah forward. We could host the tasting event on opening day of the megastore, invite the community to stand with Sweet Maple, and prove we are not only around, we're thriving. A fantastic idea, Mrs. Palmer said, her tone turning warm. But we'll need a solid plan. If we strategize and act swiftly, we can transform this challenge into a celebration of what Sweet Maple represents while embracing new ideas. With every moment, a sense of clarity descended upon Sarah, surrounding her with the warmth of resolve. She saw how her aspirations were merging seamlessly with the legacy of Sweet Maple, two sides of the same coin, creating a balance of innovation with perennial respect. This wasn't merely a bakery, it was a testament to the multifaceted story that was their heritage. As Sarah began outlining specifics for the tasting event, the pieces fell into place with surprising ease. She envisioned invitations curated from local resources, flavored concoctions that honor traditional recipes while inviting new exploration. This wasn't just Sarah's transformation. It would be Sweet Maple's moment to shine, reclaiming its position within the community. With the possibilities unfolding before her, Sarah felt an exhilarating rush of enthusiasm illuminating the struggle she had endured. By daring to marry the old with the new, she had found the transformational spark she had long sought after. Alex nodded eagerly, an affirmative smile encouraging Sarah forward. We could host the tasting event on opening day of the megastore, invite the community to stand with Sweet Maple, and prove we are not only around, we're thriving. A fantastic idea, Mrs. Palmer said, her tone turning warm. But we'll need a solid plan. If we strategize and act swiftly, we can transform this challenge into a celebration of what Sweet Maple represents while embracing new ideas. With every moment, a sense of clarity descended upon Sarah, surrounding her with the warmth of resolve. She saw how her aspirations were merging seamlessly with the legacy of Sweet Maple, two sides of the same coin, creating a balance of innovation with perennial respect. This wasn't merely a bakery, it was a testament to the multifaceted story that was their heritage. As Sarah began outlining specifics for the tasting event, the pieces fell into place with surprising ease. She envisioned invitations curated from local resources, flavored concoctions that honor traditional recipes while inviting new exploration. This wasn't just Sarah's transformation, it would be Sweet Maple's moment to shine, reclaiming its position within the community. With the possibilities unfolding before her, Sarah felt an exhilarating rush of enthusiasm illuminating the struggle she had endured. By daring to marry the old with the new, she had found the transformational spark she had long sought after. And as they formulated their plans together, Sarah felt a rush of gratitude toward both her family and the community surrounding Sweet Maple. There would be turns and adjustments ahead, but she had stepped into a leadership role, one forged from the essence of her being both a baker and a member of this town. With a final nod to Mrs. Palmer, her support unwavering and encouraging, Sarah boldly announced, "Let's show the world what Sweet Maple can be. Together, we conquer." And as they set forth to prepare for the upcoming tasting event, Sarah felt a renewed heartbeat of purpose coursing through her, realizing that she had not only achieved a significant transformation in her vision for the bakery, she had also secured her place within its legacy, claiming a robust understanding of what it was to navigate and blossom from change. Now it was time for her community to unite in this new chapter, and she would lead the charge. In that moment, a wave of exhilaration surged through her, affirming that she was ready to embrace her own journey and take Sweet Maple forward into a vibrantly shared future. It was not simply about pastries and profits. This was about belonging and bold aspirations. Representing her own pride in becoming who she was meant to be as a head baker and as a vital leader in her community. Now it was time to act decisively, to foster those connections, and to affirm both history and evolution. This was the moment when stirring creations became heartfelt commitments. Now more than ever, her story would ignite, inspiring not only a bakery, but the community it nourished. Sarah smiled, warmth enveloping her heart. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and as she stepped forward to solidify her plans with renewed vigor, love and support from her community surged around her, validating everything she wanted to create. Transformation had taken root, becoming the very fabric of her joyful resolve. In every decision they made moving forward, Sweet Maple would symbolize not merely change, it would represent resilience, hope, and the power of ambition marrying legacy. This was just the beginning of something spectacular. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support as we dive deeper into stories of incredible transformation and resilience. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us continue sharing more powerful narratives that uplift and connect. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread hope and inspiration.